Dieverune is coming out with a brand new cool toned makeup collection. Let's go ahead and swatch and talk about it. If you've watched my channel for a little while, you've heard me talk about Dieverune several times before. They make some of my favorite glowy highlighters, iridescent shadows, and they have just beautiful collections in general, and I'm really excited about this one. We're going to do some detailed swatches, try-ons, and looks. At the time that I'm making this video, I don't have prices. When I have them, I will add a pinned comment, and you can use my discount non-affiliate code to save, so I'm going to go ahead and pop it up on the screen now. This collection has quite a few pieces in it, and typically I do feel a little bit overwhelmed when that's the case, but I feel like this brand has fairly well spread out launches, so I find that I don't mind it as much, and this collection I feel like there's going to be something for everyone if these colors speak to you. Starting off first with the 15 pan eyeshadow palette. I gotta say, I've never seen a color story quite like this before. I like that it gives cool tones, but it's not simply a grayscale palette. We've also seen several palettes with grays with a pop of red, so I like that it's just something a little bit different. You've got pretty much an even split of mattes and shimmer shadows. And in general, I find that the shimmers in the Dieverune palettes are particularly standout in terms of their sparkle level. I would say the shimmers in this palette are special because of their sparkle rather than special because of their multi-chrome shift. As you can see, we have a nice range in light to deeper mattes and a nice range in light to deeper shimmers. I feel like a well-balanced palette really does have to have both, and I love the fact that we also have an iridescent in here. I simply can never resist a good highlighting shade, and this highlighting shade is very smooth in texture, so I think it's going to work well as an inner corner highlight, or of course as a highlighting shade. As many of you also know, I love a good black shimmer, so I like that we have one included in this palette. Here is what the whole palette looks like swatched to my arm. I think the main critique that I have when looking at it is that we have a few shimmers that are a little bit close to one another in terms of their shade and their tone. I feel like they are nuanced in terms of their differences, but there are a few that definitely look similar. By the way, these pans are magnetic. You can pop them out and move them around as you like. Okay, another thing I get really excited for with Dieverune launches is the single shadows. They make some really great single shadows that are very unique, and sometimes they end up being my favorite part of the collection. This is the shade Bismuth, which is this really beautiful black holographic shade. I was instantly drawn to this one. I've never seen Dieverune do a shade quite like this, and this is also very different from the dark shimmer that's in the palette. This is the shade Sterling. I wasn't sure if this was going to be a sheer diamond topper, but the density in this one is higher than a sheer sparkly topper. I would describe this as a very pale sparkly silver, and it contrasts so beautifully with the shade Bismuth. Okay, the next shade we have is called Silver Lining. This is probably the shiftiest of all of the single shadows in terms of its chrome shift. Now, in all honesty, you've probably seen a shade like this before. It has a pale blue base and a strong yellow, orange, pink, green shift. It reminds me a lot of a shade like the Cosmos from Terra Moons. This is definitely a very nice version of a shade like that. It's textured, but it doesn't feel flaky. There's ever so slightly the smallest squish in the pan, but I don't think this is the type of shade that's going to crease on me. And last but not least, we have the shade Quicksilver. I was really curious about this one because it looks quite different from the other shades, both in its texture and the shade itself. This is kind of like a semi-sheer sparkly shade. You can wear it just as like a wash of sparkle or build it up for a higher opacity, and you have silver, purple, and blue sparkles throughout. And here is what all four shades look like swatched to my arm. I really did have a hard time picking a favorite from these, but I think it's probably Bismuth. Okay, next part of this collection is the lip products. I can't tell you how much I enjoy kind of interesting lip glosses. You probably already know that I have a ton of gloss series on my channel, and I love the fact that we get some interesting shades in this launch. First, we have a sheer diamond gloss. This is called Hoarfrost. This reminds me exactly of a shade like Diamond Milk from Fenty. And Dieverune has done a gloss before. I think they may have only done one or two in the past. This is a really nice formula, and a sheer sparkly gloss is one that's always useful. But many of you, of course, may already have a gloss like this in your collection. Next, we have the shade Obsession. This is a really interesting tone of green, not one that I've really seen before. I made a gloss not too dissimilar to this at Lip Lab a couple of years ago. Really cool tone of green. You can totally wear this sheerly or build it up for a little more opacity. I would say for this gloss, it's probably best to use as a topper because it's going to be hard to get it to apply completely evenly. So probably pair it over a lip liner or use it as a topper. Next, we have a deep slate gray lip mud, and this is called Laden. I do believe that Dieverune has included a lip mud in a previous release as well. This is a tone of gray that I can totally pull off. I do have to be careful about gray lip products. If they're light, then I do have to pair them with a deeper liner. But this is a shade that looks really cool all on its own, and I think it's going to flatter a wide range of skin tones. And last but not least, we have the shade Bitter, which is a medium opacity sparkly black gloss. I love me a sparkly black gloss, especially one that has a medium opacity. I love having the chance to either sheer this out or build it up. And again, this type of gloss is new for Dieverune. They have not done a black gloss before, and I think it works perfectly for the collection. I really appreciate that all of the lip products go well with the shades that are in the eyeshadow palette. It's hard to pick a favorite of these. I think the most unique lip products are the green gloss and that kind of slate gray kind of blue lip mud. Okay, one of the parts I always look forward to when it comes to Dieverune launches is their highlighters. Now, these highlighters are definitely well suited for this launch because this is all about icy tones, cool tones. And we definitely get that with these shades, but I gotta say that these shades on my skin tone are gonna be best as sparkly toppers on the eyes because they are very silvery. This is the shade Frostbow, and with a very light hand, I think I could get this one to work okay on the face. You can see it has some really pretty multicolored sparkles. And then the second highlighter is a split pan called Grimfrost. To me, this shade looks pretty much like a straight up silver. They both have a pretty smooth texture and are very sparkly. Now, if you do have a lighter skin tone, I think these will make for really pretty kind of icy, cool toned face highlights. Here's what the two highlighters look like swatched on the back of my hand. The second and third swatches on the back of my hand are the split pan ones. Okay, the last product type we have in this launch are these cream flakies. This is a new product type for Dieverune, so really excited to see that. This first shade is a gorgeous ultraviolet called Fluorescence, and the second shade we have is a multi-chrome called Shivers. The shift in this shade is very similar to that which we see in Silver Lining in the single shadow range. Here's what both shades look like swatched on my arm. My favorite, of course, is Fluorescence. I love a beautiful ultraviolet glowy shade. Okay, and the last product we have with this launch is 3 new mascaras. I do believe that these are tubing mascaras. We have a lilac, a gray tone, and we have a blue. And again, love the way that these go with the collection. All right, and I want to do a couple of looks using this palette, starting off with some gray tones. By the way, I have the dark gloss that has sparkles in it on my lips. This is kind of like a sheer black gloss. And I am going to start off, like I said, with this light gray here and just put that all over the lid. I would say in general, I have a very good experience with the mattes from Dieverune, but I feel like they've just continued to step up in that department. And now I'm just taking a smaller brush and dusting it below the lower lash line. By the way, these are the brushes from Fantasy Cosmetica, and I am a huge fan of them. Some of my favorite synthetic brushes. They're so soft, high quality, and I noticed that they're on sale too, so I actually restocked my own. Okay, and the next gray matte we have is quite dark, so I have a feeling I have to go in with the light hand. I do really like the way that the palette is set up in terms of rows for each color. I feel like it's just an intuitive way to organize a palette. Yeah, that is super pigmented, but blends super easily. All right, and here is what we're looking like. I actually really like just those two shades blended together. I might dip in a little bit to the light gray again just to blend out the edges. But even without doing that, I feel like it looks pretty good. It's always hard to pick which shimmer shades to dip into, but I think I'm honestly just going to dip into the shimmer that's in that same row. I think it's going to go really well with the look. And then I'm just going to pat it onto the lid. This shade is really cool. It basically has silver and blue multicolored sparkles. And for my highlighting shade, I'm going to use Frostbow, which is one of the two highlighters in this collection. It's probably my favorite one. I'm just going to put a little bit on the brow bone and the inner corner. I am concerned that this one is going to be a little bit too icy on the cheeks, but part of this video is just playing with it and experimenting a little bit. So I'm going to take just a small dusting of it on this brush, and I'm just going to put it on the cheekbone. You know, I could maybe get away with it, but it is icy. And here is my first completed look. I may have gone a little bit overboard with the highlight, but that's okay. It's the first time of me applying it on the cheeks. All right, and for my second look, I want to play around with matte placement a little bit and use more of the shades in the palette. I'm going to start off with this deep kind of grungy green and just place that on the inner portion of the lid. Just kind of patting it on to build up some pigment, and then we're going to blend it out. All right, I repeated the same thing on both sides, and now I want to use this deep blue matte here. I'm going to leave the center of the lid bare because we're going to come back with a few of the other matte shades and eventually put a shimmer on the center of the lid. But I just want to try to gradually build up pigment because these deep shades are very pigmented. And I'm just tapping the pigment on and then gently buffing out the edges. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. I may go in later and just soften the edges with the lighter blue, but so far I'm liking that. Taking a kind of flatter brush and just doing the same thing along the lower lash line to connect it to the shadow on top. All right, now I'm just going to take this lighter, kind of slightly more teal matte, and just with a really light hand, I'm going to soften up around the edges. And add just a little bit along the lower lash line under that deeper blue matte shadow. Okay, and right in the outermost corner, I'm going to deepen with this kind of gray black shade there. It's not a straight up black. It's like a very, very deep gray, but I do think it's the deepest shade in the palette. I'm just going to put a little bit in that outer corner. Okay, and then I really want to use this mint shade here to just add a little bit of contrast. I do like that there's a couple of pastels in here just to lighten up, and I like using the pastels as inner corner shades. So I'm just going to add a little bit to the inner corner, and then a little bit to the brow bone. All right, I like how this is coming together. As the final matte, I'm going to use this kind of dusty shade right here and just take a little bit and just try to blend that down into my blush. I've had a lot of fun with this look so far, and I haven't even touched any shimmers, but I am gonna finish up the look with some shimmers. I'm gonna put my shimmer enhancer all over the middle of the lid and just give it a second to dry down. And for my lid shade, I'm going to use Quicksilver. This is one of the single shadows. It's a pretty interesting shade. I feel like you could wear this one pretty sheerly or just pack it on. And I'm just going to put it all over the center of the lid. I do want to use the beautiful green iridescent that's in the palette, but for my lid shade, this one just seemed perfect because it has like purple and blue, and it has some nice contrast with those deeper mattes that I used for this look. All right, and for my highlighting shade, I'm going to use this beautiful green to blue shifting iridescent that's in the palette. Here's what it looks like swatched on my fingertip, but I am going to use a brush to apply it just because I want a fairly precise application on the inner corner. Ooh, that is so pretty. And this one is very smooth in texture, which I like. It's very easy to work with and pick up on a brush or on your fingertip. Just adding a little bit to the brow bone on top of that mint shade. And just for the sake of being extra, and because I haven't dipped into these flakes yet, I'm going to take this shade Fluorescence, which is an ultraviolet. And here is what it looks like. So watch my fingertip. I'm just going to add the smallest amount to the center of the lid as my finishing touch. All right, and here is my second completed look. I absolutely love how this one came together and that we got to play with so many of the shades and formulas. And before I forget to mention, I have the Obsession gloss on my lips. It's a sheer kind of dark green gloss, and I did pair it with a deep brown liner. All right, now that we've had a chance to go through everything, let's close up with some wrap-up thoughts. I had a lot of fun playing with this collection. This is my first time doing a dedicated video to Dieverune, but I have a lot of favorites from the brand, which you probably know about if you've been watching me for a little while, especially their highlighters. I really have been looking forward to this collection because it's been quite a while. It's been since Christmas time since we last got a release from Dieverune. I do really appreciate that the launches feel spread out. This is definitely their most cool toned collection. My favorite parts of the collection are the palette and the single shadows. But I do want to say that I feel like the favorites are going to be different for everyone because we have some really cool products in this collection. We have some glosses that are basically an alt beauty lover stream. I don't think I've seen a gloss like this really from any brand. I actually made a gloss similar to this at Lip Lab, I want to say a little over a year ago. It was probably more like a year and a half ago, because I had never seen kind of like a deep foresty green gloss. So I think this is really cool that a brand is launching this kind of gloss. I think these are really great. But, you know, I had to pick my own favorites, and it's the shadows. It's the eyeshadow palette and the single shadows. There are a few things I would change about the palette, so let's talk about that. First of all, this color story really challenged me. I really appreciate that, and I really do like the looks that I came up with. I think that a couple of the shimmers are maybe a little bit close to one another. There are, of course, this is a Silver and Cold collection. I don't think there's any that are dupes, but there's some silvery shades that are a bit close to one another. So I might have changed that. The other thing is I probably would have added in another light matte. We get a beautiful assortment of deep mattes, but I do like having contrast between lights and deep shades to kind of have a look with a lot of contrast. So I might have added maybe one lighter shade to this palette just for that purpose. I am so glad that I tried on all of the single shadows, because I truly think that all of the singles in this collection are beautiful. So if you were trying to narrow it down, hopefully seeing them all swatched and tried on will be of help to you. Now, you all know that I love a highlighter from Dieverune. I have to say the highlighters were actually not my favorite part of this collection. I think they are beautiful, and if you have a lighter skin tone, then you will probably get on better with these than I did. I'm probably going to use these as eyeshadow toppers. They're sparkly, they're pretty, but they're not the glowy kind of highlighter that I really tend to love from Dieverune, especially like the drop highlighter. So I certainly hope we have more highlighter shades like that in the future. However, I do think that these highlighters do fit the theme of the collection, which is Silver and Cold. Okay, and last but not least, we have a new product type from Dieverune, and that's these cream flakies. I think these are a lot of fun, and a product that, you know, most brands don't carry. I think these shades pack a lot of punch and are really going to spice up a look. So I am excited about that. I don't know exactly how long they're going to last before drying out. However, I would recommend keeping this little cover here, because that is going to keep this formula as good as possible for as long as possible. All right, now that we've gone through everything, I would love to hear what your favorite parts of the collection are down in the comments. Let me know if you're planning to pick anything up. As always, I really hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.